Buenas tardes, good afternoon. ¿Qué pasa, mujer? Es el nombre de nuestro show. Our show is called ¿Qué pasa, mujer? Which means what's going on, women. However, we talk about men topics as well. So don't think it's just for the girls. So we handle all types of topics. We talk about finances, education, relationships, the workflow, finances. And that's what we're going to talk about today, a little bit about finances. Today is June the 1st, so we're halfway through 2025, and I know that a lot of us made some goals at the beginning of 2025. So we're halfway through the year, and next thing you know, it will be 2026. So we have to be prepared so that December doesn't get here and it's just like super surprising that we didn't complete our goals as expected. So we're going to go ahead and bring Nicte on. She's here to join us as well, one of our co-hosts. Hola, Nicte.
Hello, mujer. Good morning. Afternoon for you.
Afternoon. So we're on the East Coast. Nicte is what time zone?
The Hawaii, we have our own time zone, the Hawaii time zone.
The Hawaii
10 in the morning.
It's 10 in the morning, and Eastern Standard Time will be 4 in the afternoon. So we already had breakfast and lunch.
Yes, you're in the future. I'm still living the last little bit of the past.
Yes, I actually wish that I was in the past and not the future, because then I would have more time, more hours in the day.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So how you been? How's the weather over there? How's the family?
Good. It's a little cloudy today, which is, normal. Sometimes we'll have cloudy and then all of a sudden it's sunshine. It's officially summer. School is over, so it's summertime. So that's going to be very fun. Trying to keep busy, and we've been good. Just a lot of stuff going on, good stuff, but it's, how sometimes you just need to slow down to like catch your breath. So that's a lot of what we are doing.
Very good. I like it. I just came back from Orlando. As you guys know, I'm a basketball mom. So my son was playing basketball this weekend. So I always try and take the time, even though there's a basketball tournament, it's still some time for me, So that's one of my goals always. No, not always, but I would say the last 2 years, to make sure that I do some self-love practices. Do you do any of that stuff, Nicte?
So I'm bad about doing that, but I've been really trying to put it on my calendar. I realize if I say I'm going to do it and don't put it somewhere where like I can hold myself accountable, I won't. So what I've been doing is whenever I do a big project or something big, I try to give myself a day or two after to do something fun or something relaxing to kind of have my quiet recuperating time. Don't always do it, but I've gotten much better about it. And it does make a big difference when you do kind of give yourself that self-love, quiet time. Even before the show, I was starting to do a little bit of like my Sunday facial thing. And then after the show, I shall continue.
Yeah, spa day, right? Yeah, I think that's always important. And sometimes it doesn't really take a lot of effort. I think it's just kind of like just being still for a moment and just thinking about, let me, like, for example, my office, I have windows right in my office. So sometimes I just look out the window, and that's my moment to disconnect from whatever I have going on. And I've had to realize that a friend of mine brought it to my attention. She said, your office always has to face a window because you work better that way. So I like those mental breaks. So that could be considered, self-love. I think Maddie's here. So we're going to go ahead and bring Maddie on, our other co-host as well. Hola, Maddie.
Hola, mujer.
It is long time no see you guys. I feel like I haven't seen us in forever.
Yeah. Well, it's like that sometimes, Yeah. It's like, ¿qué pasa?
I love your necklace or your shirt.
It's a necklace.
It's a necklace. Okay.
Beautiful.
Very nice.
Beautiful.
I like it.
Thank you. Good to see you, Nikki.
Good to see you.
Yeah. So I'm glad Maddie's here because we're going to talk about money today. So El Dinero and Legacy, right? So as you guys know, I'll say it early in the show, but Latinos contribute $3.7 trillion to the U.S. economy. So $3.7 trillion to the economy. As you guys know, I mention it on the show, every single show I mention it because I think it's crucial information. And whenever I'm in company of pretty much anybody, I mention those numbers, whether it's Hispanic people, Spanish people, Latinos, every I mention it to everybody that whatever my circle is, I mention it at least 2 or 3 times a week. Because I think that's one way of empowering ourselves. And sometimes I know we're talking about money today, but I think just in general, we should find ways to empower ourselves or our community, our household, our families in some capacity, right? Just to kind of show the uniqueness that we have or the value that we add, even if it's just in our home. I think it's very important. Like I know for you, Nick, for your son to feel so proud that his mother is an entrepreneur, right? To know that his dad is in the military. So I think some of those things we kind of take for granted sometimes because it's just our daily life. But I think it's good to not lose value of it, not take it for granted, and just to kind of show our young people that that's what we do. But I wanted to ask you, Maddie, and Nikte as well. Uh, did you what was the first job that you had, like ever? Maddie, you could go first.
So for me, I still remember it was a summer job and it was like a 6 or 8 weeks thing. And it was at a dentist office. It was at the hospital. But I was in the dental department and I was filing the client's files, putting them in alphabetical order and making the appointments. I was 14 years old, and it was for Presbyterian Hospital in New York City. So yeah, I still remember I did that for a summer, and I remember I took the job because I wanted a pair of contacts. I had started wearing glasses at 14, but I also play sports, so I wanted to make sure that I could have my glasses for everyday use, but I wanted to have my contacts to play. And my mom was like, "I'll pay for your glasses, but I'm not buying contacts." So I worked my summer job to buy my first pair of contacts.
Awesome. That's great. I love that. How about you, Nikte?
So I guess official first job would probably be in college. I mean, when we were back home, we would help my mom with her business because she had two stores. She had a kids store and a lingerie store. So I learned the initial part of it, but it was, of course, you're working with family. I was getting paid in knowledge. Um, so that was like my unofficial first job. But my first job really was when I was in college and I was working at the school newspaper and laying out the newspaper, working on the comic section. That's kind of where I started. So I was a production designer, and it was a really great experience. I learned a lot of, I think, a lost art right now that a lot of people don't see with print and how newspapers are done. So that really was a really good job to kind of get me started. And I wanted to make sure that I got some experience before I graduated college, and I'm very thankful that I did that. So, yeah, it feels like it's
Nice.
eons ago. I still have some of my designs from when I used to do in the newspaper. And I'm like, oh my God, they were so terrible. But it's so nice to look back and see how much you've grown to like
Yeah.
kind of reflect on where you started.
Yeah, I love to see with my business like the original flyers that I did because I didn't have a lot of money, so just what they look like and
Mhm.
versus what they look like now. But I wanted to talk to you guys about this because this is where the money concept begins, right? Probably when we're younger, and some people do want to work when they're young, some people don't. But it's the concept of having this side hustle, right? And we originally started with just the one job, but then we end up having side hustles. And even for me, I have side hustles today at my age. But my first job, I worked at a real estate office. alphabetical order, right? So I love the fact that we're still teaching alphabetical order. I think it's like a first grade concept. So for you little people, make sure you know how to put things in alphabetical order or numerical order. I remember I used to volunteer actually at the library, but that was volunteer work. So I learned their number system. But at my high school, half of the day you would go to school, and then the other half you could go to work, which
Oh,
it was called a
wow.
co-op program. So it was at a real estate office, and I just did administrative work. You know, the same thing, alphabetical order, putting things in files, answering the phones, transferring the phone calls to the real estate agents. And it's so funny. I think I had mentioned it in a couple of shows ago, but I recently sold a house, and I went back to the broker where I used to work, and one of her agents sold the house for us. So I knew it was somebody that I could trust. So it was like an easy transaction, but it was nice to, kind of still have that connection with her, and that she was really one of my mentors. She's and to this day, I use the concept of KISS, keep it simple, stupid, but I call it silly now. I don't say
Yeah.
stupid, but she's the one that taught me that. And for my entire life, I have used that concept. So definitely, some of these jobs truly make impact in our lives. With my business today, I work with the local city, and they provide teenagers to work, and the city pays their salary, but they work. So I'll take 2 or 3 students every summer, and so they're working, they're helping me, and it's free labor for me, but at the same time we're also mentoring them, we're teaching them about smart goals. A lot of them want to they explore entrepreneurship, even though they're helping in the educational realm, but that they might be also be tapping into entrepreneurship. So it's kind of like it all spirals back. But do you guys currently, well, Maddie has a side hustle with poetry. Nikte, do you have a side hustle that we're not aware of,
Oh, man.
or strictly branding?
I think it's just I just don't have the time sometimes to, when I have my free time, it's more like with spending time with my son because he's younger. I had my kid when I was much older than most people, so I think I don't have a side hustle. I think it's really more of I kind of focus in on my what I'm doing with the business, and then after that, even though I do some things on the side for creativity, I'm not actively pushing it as like a side business or anything because I'm like, yeah, no. I'm in that
Yeah.
one lane.
Yeah. Do you do anything that maybe doesn't bring in income, but it's just a hobby of yours?
Um, I don't know. Well, sometimes I like to, and it's weird because it kind of still intersects a little bit with what I do, but like sometimes I like to just draw patterns on a notebook. Or lately, I've been getting into like gardening, which is like a therapy in itself for me. It's just trickier here because the UV index is so intense. You have to be careful where you put things. But that's kind of been a nice thing that I do. So I'll just go out, be with my little garden and my plants and start to kind of do things there. And then my husband started making mead. So now I help him with the process of it. And it's actually, they're really good. So that's kind of a hobby-ish that I picked up from him. And yeah.
That sounds interesting. Maddie, do you have anything else besides poetry?
I do. I love. You guys know that I love decorating. I think we talked a little bit about it, but I try to decorate the house for the seasons. So I got into crafting. So sometimes I make some of my decorations. And the one thing that I've been doing is doing door wreaths and signs and stuff like that you put around the house. So, you know, sometimes I get into it and I'll make 2, 3, 4 wreaths, and then I go a year without doing anything, and then but I do like making projects and then displaying them. Like now for the summer, my living room is decorated with like sunflowers and a lot of yellows and stuff like that. For the summer, I made 2 door wreaths that were 2 sunflowers, and I just used them on the wall in my living room, and they look really cute. So I make it a point when everybody walks in, I made those.
I'm so boring. I just kind of keep the same decorum all the time. Maybe twice a year. Like I'm in the process of rearranging my office, and I'll change my accent chairs. But that's it. That's it. I'll go.
Yeah,
And
no, no,
I do like, even though I do like color, I enjoy the color. So I will have like I have an accent wall in whatever room I'm in usually. So that's my creativity.
yeah, no, I changed my curtains. I changed my decorations on top of my cabinets. I have stuff for all the seasons, so I change all of those. And yes,
That
You
sounds
have
so
a really big
exhausting.
attic, Maddie? Like, where do you store all the off-season things? That's what I want to
my
know.
my 2 car garage can't even handle the grass cutter because it's like packed from top to bottom. So yes.
Oh.
That's cool. So we were talking about this because it's about money and how we can have, when teenagers start to look for jobs or ways, like you were saying, you wanted to get your contacts. So I would say even today there are some parents that do make their children work for some
Mhm.
of the luxuries that they have. I know with my oldest son, he's been able to referee. He's at a high school now, but before he graduated, he would referee games. So he played basketball, but he learned how to referee. He did football, like just parks and rec, but he did football and he did basketball games. So probably my youngest son would probably be doing the same thing, and they both have worked my summer camp as well, so it's something that they
Mhm.
enjoy. But these are some I wanted to kind of go over some statistics in reference to, and Maddie, I wanted to get your input in reference to Latinos and home ownership. And you can talk a little bit about the interest rates and all that good stuff. But it says that as of 2024, Latino ownership it has reached 49.5, which is the fastest growing demographic in that category. So I wanted you to talk a little bit about the Latino home ownership. I know sometimes people hesitate to purchase because interest rates are high, but I know that maybe we can refinance or eventually you'll kind of get the money back. But if you can kind of talk about the importance of home ownership in our community here in the United States.
I think it's so hard because in our countries, it's like you like in Dominican Republic, you don't have the credit works a little bit different. So you don't necessarily have to like build credit and have built established credit in order to get credit. um, People don't necessarily go get a home loan to build the house, so it's completely different. You either have the money or you don't, or you start gathering money and you buy bricks and material, as you can get your hands in it, and then the building process can take 1 year to 3 years to 10, so it's completely different. And then you come to this country and then it's like, okay, you got to build credit, not necessarily, oh, I'm ready to buy a home now. No, but you gotta be good on paper as well. So it's teaching, the culture, that concept, and going through the process. It's a very, I do have to say, it's a very fulfilling process, also to see, to get somebody that maybe has no idea on how to purchase, and then comes to us and we start walking them through the process and eventually can get them to that place where they can own a home. So it's just learning how the system, the whole economic system works, and what you have to do. One of the things, and I think we've talked about this before as well, one of the things that we run into a lot with a lot of the self-employed people is that, when you're doing your taxes, the first advice that they tell you is try to write off everything that you can so that you don't have to pay taxes. So what ends up happening is that, yes, you write off everything and you don't pay as much in taxes, but then you have no income. So when you want to make a major purchase such as a home, you might not necessarily qualify because you've been writing everything off. So it's kind of finding that happy medium where I can show that my business is growing, I can take advantage of this. So it's having, again, going back to having those full conversations, when you are starting your business. If this is going to be your sole income, this is how you want to handle it. Where are you going? Where do you see yourself? When we talk a lot about the new businesses, especially in the Hispanic side, we don't talk about the business plan side of it, and a lot of the cities, I know here in Hampton Roads, a lot of the cities have those small business sections that work with the community, and they can do those business plans for free for the business owners. So I think that is something that we're not leveraging enough, and it's one of those things that forces you to think, okay, this is where my business is now. This is how much I'm gonna spend. This first year is gonna be crazy, but this is where I want to be year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5. And I think that also translate to your personal financial goals as well. So again, the best thing that I can tell you, it's sometimes it's overwhelming because we're having a tough time. Okay, I'm trying to put this business together now. You don't want to think about tomorrow because you need to make it through today. But me myself, having been a business owner that fail, is one of those things that I wish that I knew then what I know now. To have taken those steps and to force myself to think about the future, so that maybe it would have been a different outcome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's very important. So I think about Latinos are starting businesses at a rate of 44%, which is higher than the national average. It was an article from 2023. So we're creating businesses. We are purchasing homes. I think we are getting educated. But as always, I think that we could do better. We could do a better job. And it's true what you said about being a homeowner, being a business owner, and just kind of playing with those numbers to make sure that we're able to purchase. And I wanted to get your input too in reference to, I've seen some videos in reference to that it's okay to rent, right? It's okay to rent, and you can still buy property, but rent the property and then you would rent. I wanted to know your input on that.
Oh yeah, I mean that's something. Again, everybody's situation is different, so it just depends on your situation and what you're wanting to accomplish. So like now that we are kind of like halfway empty nesters, maybe that's something that my husband and I have spoken, a little bit about, maybe either selling our home, because we have a 5-bedroom home, that when everybody leaves, what are we going to do with all this space? You know what I'm saying? So it's like, okay, this is a lot of house for us. And one, we're entering another stage in our lives because, we're a lot older and then when we moved into the house, and then I have my father that's elderly as well living with me, so it's like one of those things. Okay, we need to downsize. So if we were to downsize, like what would my house rent for, and how much can I get in rent? Would that pay my mortgage and make a little bit extra, while my husband and I and my dad, we can find a 2-bedroom 3-bedroom apartment and pay $1,200 and maybe get $2,500, pay the mortgage and get a little bit left. So so those are things that everybody's situation is different, so you have to think about what works for you. Maybe a young couple with a young kid cannot think, oh yeah, I'm going to rent an apartment and then buy a property and rent it. That might not work for you at that moment, but it's always good to again, home ownership, you cannot go wrong with home ownership, because I think it's the best savings account, because you invest in it and you're forced, you have to pay it, so you're building equity, so you're saving without telling yourself, I don't have money to save. Yes, you're paying on your mortgage, so you are saving, so it's one of those things, that if you can get your hands on a property, whether it is a condo, a house, do it. You can never go wrong with real estate. You mentioned before, yes, the interest rates are high or whatever, but you got to also remember, when the interest rates are low, it's a seller's market. So they can sell the house and put the prices whatever the heck they want to put it, because they can, because the interest rates are low. People are qualifying for more money, and there's a demand for property because everybody wants to buy because the rates are low. But if the rates are higher, the sellers just want to get rid of the properties. So you're able to negotiate a little bit more. You can kind of wiggle your way into, okay, this home, they can knock down a substantial amount out of the final price of the house, because they needing to get out of the property or get rid of the property. So, yes, the interest rates may be higher, but it is a buyer's market.
Yeah, definitely. And I was thinking too about like the Nikis of the world, right? The military families. Because here where I live, we kind of have military from everywhere. So it just depends, right? Like you were saying, Maddie, just depending on the goals of the family, the household. I've heard of people that just rent forever, because they just like the peacefulness. I don't have to worry about the tenants and the possible evictions, because it's a headache, right? Sometimes it's worth the headache, right? So like, I don't know if I told you guys, but we recently had to, my mom and I had to evict somebody from the house, for a house that we had in New Jersey. So it was a huge headache for years, but finally we were able to sell it, and then to be able to get those profits and bring them to Virginia. It's big, right? It's that you get to see the fruit of the investment. But how much is peace of mind worth as well? So Nick, I wanted to get your input, right, since you're a military family, in reference to and I don't know if it changes from region to region. Like here in Virginia, we have all the branches pretty much where I live, and so you kind of get a little bit of everything. So I wanted to get some of your input in reference to the places that you've been in and maybe where you are now.
Yeah, that's such a good question. We've purposefully rented everywhere we've gone. And the reason being is we've had friends in the military who have bought houses and then they buy it. And we had one of my husband's old coworkers that they lost, I think it was like 100K in their house when they had to sell it. So we've heard so many more challenging stories and trying to sell or renting, or people renting the houses and it gets trashed. And then when you're like you're in another state or even in another country, managing your property and putting your trust on a company, you can do all the research, but when you're not there, it makes it a lot more challenging. So we've strategically not purchased. And it's also, I think it has to do with, if you buy a house in a place where you know the market's going to be good, that there's, let's say, getting a house on base is very challenging, that you have higher chances of being able to rent, but also where you buy a house where you know you can come back and that's where you want to stay. There are people too that make more money in the military, depending on kind of like a rank thing, that we know. We have friends that have bought almost everywhere they've gone, and then they buy, then they rent, they sell, and they've been able to have that approach, but we're not in that state. And even here, we see a lot of people trying to buy houses. Houses here in Hawaii are very, very expensive. The cost of living is very expensive. So a lot of people consider that. And then there's been one of the things that I didn't know was such a big issue is because there's so many people, not just military, but people who just want to have a vacation home, that's actually caused a lot of issues for the locals to be able to afford housing. So that's been this whole issue of families who are displaced, or even how we've seen this in our countries where you'll have like 5 families living in one tiny home because that's all they can afford. So being able to kind of see that, we've just been strategic about renting a place that is good for us, not living beyond our means, because we've been saving for that time when we get to buy a house, and we want to buy something that is kind of like a fixer upper so we can fix to make it ourselves. So our approach has been different, but we've seen it in different ways and how people approach purchasing. It can be very, we know some people that have made money from it, that they'll pay the mortgage from one of their dream homes by kind of doing that as a system. But it's also, if you want to be able to go through the hassle, like you were saying, Viviana, or having the savviness or the know-how to handle that. And that's something that we're just like, that's just not in our mindset. It's not worth it to juggle multiple properties. And then, that's
Yeah, because
unless
when
like
you're
it's
in the
something you like.
when you're in the middle of it, you're like, oh my God, this is not
Yeah,
worth it, right? So
yeah.
luckily, my mom and I got lucky, and it was worth it, right? Just because of the
Mhm,
location of the property.
mhm,
But at the moment, it was not something that was planned. It just happened to work out. But I think you do have to be strategic about your goals and the things that you're
mhm,
trying to accomplish. So I'm sure you and your husband have discussed when he's potentially going to retire and the benefits that you
mhm,
can get and the programs that he's eligible for, to buy real estate, being in military. But I
mhm,
think at the end of the day, it all depends on the financial literacy, right? That happens at home, Maddie, the
mhm,
educational piece. Just recently, my oldest son, had to get his car inspected, and it didn't pass right away
mhm,
because brakes, tires, some type of sensor was going off that he has been ignoring. So it was a teaching moment, that he has to pay for because he goes to school and he has a job. So and it was crazy because it was the concept of, oh, you have to pay $1,000 and you just kind of hand a credit card because you have it, right? But I
mhm,
was telling him and his dad, you could have the 1,000 or $2,000, but maybe you can get the brakes done somewhere else for half the price, and you don't have to go to the dealership, right? Some repairs are dealership a must, but some are not, and you can save a lot of money. But it's part of that financial literacy, and sometimes we can think about all the different topics we could talk about with our children, but once it actually happens, that is like the greatest teaching moment because I don't think we ever sat down with him and went over an inspection sticker. Like we talked about the inspection sticker, but we never talked about the things that could go wrong or how much it would be. Um, so that's definitely something that happened recently. And my son is 20 years old,
mhm,
but it was his first time taking the car for inspection, and it was
mhm,
his first time failing. And just like making it work and finding the solution for the problem. Um, so I thought that was pretty interesting. Also, I wanted to also talk to you guys about investments. So this is another statistic. It says only 28% of Latinos report investing in the stock market compared to 61% in white households. So I think it's the fear of investing. Perhaps we don't know how to, and perhaps just the way the economy and what's happening in the economy at the time, in reference to how confident we are of investing.
mhm.
So Nikta, I wanted like, did any of your parents ever talk to you about investments as you were growing up, or even to this day?
A little bit. I know there was a summer where my mom, I don't remember how she found out, but and she paid for my brother and I to go to this like investments course to kind of learn about the stock market. And I was very thankful for it. It definitely is something that is such a valuable tool because I remember my parents saying like, we didn't have this, we didn't have access to this, we didn't know how that managed, and we kind of want to give you guys that opportunity to learn from this. I think the issue with the investment is like kind of like what you were saying. It's that fear of the unknown, our fear of not knowing what would be the right choice to make. And one of the things that we've done, we have investments, but we have people that do it for us. And then we keep knowledge enough to understand what's going on. But and then it's also kind of like picking where you can go to where having someone that can help you manage that and be very smart about who you choose to do that, knowing the groundwork. I think that that's what's important. But today with technology and all the information, like Maddie always says, it's a lot easier to get educated versus our parents or even our when we were much younger, there wasn't enough information publicly to learn from that.
Hmm. Yeah, and like we were saying, like Maddie was saying, just depending on the goals of the household. I know a couple where she was investing in the stock market. He had more real estate investments, and this
Mhm.
was like I think this was their second marriage, so it's something that was new to their marriage. But once they were ready to retire, she was able to bring to the table her stock market investments, and he was able to bring his real estate investments to the table for retirement for both of them. So I wanted to get your input about that, Maddie, about the stock market and how we educate about that to our younger people, or the things that you have seen in the banking industry because of the lack of knowledge that the Latino, specifically the Latino community has in reference to that.
Yeah, I think, it goes back to having the actual conversations, like you were saying, like how many, at least for me, I'm going to speak for myself, not for you guys, but for myself, like I don't ever remember talking about money with my parents. My dad is 77, and I don't think my dad has ever bought anything on credit, so, kind of like the layaway where you pay slowly or whatever, but never on credit, like he doesn't know what credit is. And we've never had those conversations. And my dad has been in the United States for like 60 years. He came really, really young. So, but we never had those credit conversations. So I learned about credit on my own, getting in trouble, getting a college card, had to file bankruptcy in the past, so like there were so many mistakes that were made because we had no idea, because we didn't have those conversations. So when it comes to investing, I think it's the same thing. You are not gonna pour yourself into something that you don't really understand how it works. Plus, if you think about it, a lot of what happens a lot with the Hispanic community is that they come to the United States with a short-term plan, and the long-term plan is to go back to their country. So it's like, okay, why am I going to invest here if in the next 2 years, I start losing money? Then I got to take my money out of there and put it somewhere, because in next 5, I'm going to go back to my country. When we know that we never leave. 90% of the time we stay here because this is what we know. And sometimes you think, okay, yeah, I'm gonna retire at 50. No, you're not. Like not too often you get a person that gets to retire at 50. So we got to continue working. The children, it's what, like my kids, if I wanted to retire to DR right now, my kids are in college. My kids wouldn't survive over there, because they're not used to that lifestyle over this completely different. So it's not like I can make that radical change. So I have to wait for them to graduate, for them to be settled before I can think about ever going back to my country. So again,
And then
it's
you're gonna have grandkids.
and then yeah, you won't want to go because you don't want to leave the grandkids. You see, so it's learning what works, for you, your age, like again, like now I look at my retirement account that's invested in the stock market, and sometimes I look at it and I start crying. I'm like, oh my god. And then you the next day it's like, okay, it's not too bad, it's coming back, and then I think about it, I'm like, man, I still got 20 years that I still have to work for 20 years. So whatever is happening now, it's not gonna affect the long term goal if I keep doing what I'm doing, So it's like, it's one of those things, again, you have to have those conversations, because again, retirement also was not a conversation that I ever had with my parents. My parents don't know what it was, to have a savings account. My parents' goal was to come here, make money, to build a house in DR, to retire to DR. And that never happened, and it never will, so it's one of those things. Okay, what's the realistic goal? How can I educate myself? How can we have these conversations? Going back to your conversation, Viviana, with your son, like how many times do we sit down as parents, and we all make this mistake because we don't want to burden our kids with the struggles that we have to make things happen. We don't want to have the realistic conversation. Do you know how much it's costing me? My sons are 22, about to turn 22, and I've had to have these conversations with them. It is costing $45,000 a year for you to go to the school that you're going. You don't have time to change your major because you're about to graduate. You don't have time to, this is the plan, and you have to stay with this plan, and then these are going to be your options. So, for them it's like eye opening, like what in the world, but I got yeah, you got a scholarship, but you still got to come up with 15,000 to to complement whatever. So it's a lot. And again, as parents, we make the mistake that we don't want to have those conversations with our children, because it's like, no, concentrate in your schooling and do this or that. No, it's a privilege. You're going to that school, it's a privilege, and it's costing every single day that you stay there. It's costing a lot of money. It's costing $10,000 a year for you to just be able to eat, So, but they don't understand that, because we're making it happen. How? They don't care. They don't know. We're making it happen. So I think it's important to get to that point where we can have those conversations. Just like your son, my sons, play baseball. They've learned to umpire as well. And then, they get hired for little tournaments here and there, and they can make a little bit of money for the summer, and be able to have some money to spend in whatever they want, So, but it is important. Oh, you want to get contacts, you want to go whatever, you want to buy the latest video, then go work so you can buy it yourself. So I think, again, as parents, we need to find a way to kind of incorporate those difficult conversations without thinking that we are passing our burden to them, but it's just a way of making them understand that things don't just happen because your parents are making it happen, and it's a sacrifice and it's a privilege, so not everybody gets to do what you are doing. So
yeah, especially because we don't have a lot of money exchange. It's just the swiping of a credit card. I remember when I was in high school, the guy that I was dating during my high school years, his dad, he would have to ask his dad for money to go to the movies. And then one day he was like, wait a minute, am I dating Viviana or are you? Because I'm always paying for you guys to go to the movies, But I think it's that concept of having to work for it, even if you work at home. Like the guy that I was dating in high school, he was a baseball player, so the focus was, baseball and academics. So I don't know if he could work or anything like that, but just kind of like taking care of responsibilities at home is one way that we could teach our children responsibility. And even if they, with your son being his age, it's something that you can start that early. And I think sometimes it's very cultural. I remember my grandmother using the envelope method, but there was no conversation that ever took place about the envelope method, right? And I think a lot of Latinos, or a lot of people in general, live paycheck to paycheck, but sometimes we don't know that we can seek financial coaching, and I think that's one of the reasons why it's so important to build a relationship with your banker, even if you're not a business owner, but just kind of. I don't like the big banks, to be honest with you. Me personally, do I have an account with them? Yes, just in case. Like if I have to send Nikte some money in Hawaii for whatever the reason, if I need to use one of those big banks. But I usually like to support the smaller banks in my area. And me personally, I have experience a relationship with them. And I could talk to them not just about my business aspect, but also about my personal. Nikte, I wanted to get your input since you're an entrepreneur as well. Have you noticed a difference in reference to maybe even the places that you've been to and the relationships you've had with bankers?
Yeah, that's such a great conversation, because since we've had to move so often, I had and I'm totally blanking out, Trustmark, I think that was a bank, and it's only available in the southern states. So when we lived in Texas, actually no, when we lived in Florida, I opened an account there, so that way I could have the business account just for the business. And then when we moved to Texas, that was fine. But the moment I needed to access the bank and we moved from Texas, no longer in Florida, even when we were in San Antonio, the only actual physical bank was in Houston. So I couldn't go and say, hey, I need to go talk to my banker, be in person, or, do something that required me to be physically there. I could not do that. So for me, I did research and I had to, see which large scale bank I could use that would give me access anywhere I went to. So that has been a frustrating part of the entrepreneurial journey, because we have to move so often. Being able to have a bank that's going to be available wherever we are had been a key. So I think it's a very important, like you ladies were both saying, is having that relationship with your banker. But I think also when it comes to personal and even business, finding a bank that is going to meet you at your needs and that you feel comfortable having that relationship with bankers is key. When I switched the business side to Chase, we ended up going with Chase. I loved our banker. My husband went and we were originally just going for the business side. And we ended up switching from USAA, which wasn't doing as great anymore. And we ended up switching from that to Chase. So, and it was all because of this relationship that we had with the banker, that person that, like that you're personal. I don't know how else, but they were very personal, that we could ask questions. They had the answers to. So I think all of those things are important. And I think culturally for us as Latinos, it's something that we have to break those barriers and ask questions, being okay and saying, hey, this is our hard earned money. You got to be okay with asking questions because no one's giving you the money. You want to find the right people in the right place or company to help you with that. And just asking those questions and learning to be firm about what matters for you and your family is something that we've learned along the way. And then I'll just like circle back really quickly when we were talking about initially about investments and Latinos and the fear that we have. A lot of people don't realize that when it comes to investing, you can be very conservative or you can be more aggressive. It all depends on your goals. So when we first started, it was more conservative. And now then we started to get a little bit better hang of it. Then we started to find like a nice common middle ground that we felt comfortable enough knowing that it's going to be volatile. You're going to have ups and downs. And just if you have the opportunity to be able to take that on, take it. If not, then do what is right for your family. But it doesn't have to be all in. You can lose all your money. No, there's really great ways to do it in a sustainable way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like my friend told me, the one that the stock market, and her husband did the real estate. She said she would always tell people, just start with $50. That's all you need, just to kind of get started, just to kind of get your feet wet. And I think people don't. There's a fear because of the unknown, and they haven't met that person that they can trust, that they can do the transaction with, because that's big. And that's why I'm big on the relationships that I have with my banker. It's extremely important. The same thing, like people come to me because they want to open up a business account or something like that. And there's a local bank here that I found out, but they do everything online. And I just don't like that. I want to be able to go to the bank and me as Viviana, not as number 146 7 8 9. Like, I don't like that. I like the fact that, and I think it's my only child syndrome because I like to feel VIP. But I love that. I love that I can go and get something notarized and I don't have to pay for it, or just like, I'm not just a number. And I think that very few banks can offer that. And I love that. That's one thing too. I always tell people as they're looking to open up a bank account to interview and shop around and, go to at least 3 places and then figure and ask those hard questions, because they're going to they're going to have your money. So I think it's important. It's just like when people come to my business for tutoring, I always tell the students, like, this is not free. Your parents are paying for this. So like, we're working for you. So by the time that you leave, you better know what we just went over. Like, even if we have to go over the session, you got to make sure that you know it because we work for you. So it's that having that swag, and for it to not be an intimidating relationship because you are working for me. Right. And I think we fail to have that swag. And that's why I'm big about mentioning the $3.7 trillion to empower people, to be able to make those decisions, to walk in with that swag into a place. But yeah, I think that's important. Maddie, what else do you think in reference to like the cultural conversations or even the mental health piece to this? It could be very intimidating.
again, I mean, we say it all the time, and I keep saying it's just education. Like Nick was saying, we cannot be afraid to ask questions. I always tell everybody, and especially like with when I'm having an investing conversation with a client, and telling them to get an opinion. I always tell them either bring somebody that is familiar with the investing process so that they can help you ask questions, because sometimes it's not like, oh, they didn't tell me what I needed to know. Well, you didn't ask either. You know what I'm saying? But how are you going to be able to ask something that you don't know about? So either bring somebody to that is familiar with the investing process so that they can help you ask questions. A lot of the times, I tell the clients, do you want me to sit in with you? I'm not an expert in the area, but I've heard things. I know, here and there, I can maybe help ask the questions. Plus, you're telling me what your concerns are. How can I relay that to our investment person so that they can give you the answers that you may be seeking, And then also ask a second opinion. Every bank, I think 99% of the population has more than one bank. Let's be honest. You have more than one bank, and almost every bank can offer very similar, if not the same services. So if you're banking with me and you're loyal to me, great. I appreciate you. But if you have access to another bank, go to the bank and ask the same questions so that you're sure that this person gave you the answers that you wanted to hear. And now that you had this conversation and you took notes this conversation, you can go to this other person and ask the same questions. There's nothing wrong with that. We do that. We should be doing that with our health. If you get a diagnosis that you're not unsure of, that you're something drastic, go somewhere else and get a second opinion. Do the same thing with your finances before you make that decision. Anytime we talk about investing, most of the time you're talking about products that you're going to invest for, a little longer term, 3, 4, 5 years. If that's the case, then take your time, do your homework, interview 2 or 3 people, and then find the product that best suits you. Again, the same thing with the banking. When you're looking for a banking relationship, there's nothing wrong with going around and interviewing people. I know as Hispanic people, we bank with people, not necessarily with the banks, and that's just a cultural thing. You find somebody that speaks Spanish that's able to explain things to you and things like that. Maybe not so much with you ladies or with us because we are proficient in English, but somebody that might not be as proficient as we may be might be afraid to do business with somebody that only speaks English and cannot relay some of the information in Spanish. So, but at the same time, I always tell clients, I'm here to give you the information. If you're still not comfortable, I don't want you to do something that you're not comfortable with, then go somewhere else, and ask the same questions and see what kind of answers you get, and I always say, I'm not always going to have the best product for you. It's what's convenient for you, what works for you, what's best for you. I want you to make the right decision for you. How can I help you get there or do that? So it's going to be educating ourselves, asking questions, having other resources. Like Viviana said, every bank works differently, so it's like sometimes a client comes to me and this is what I want to do. Well, I'm not able to get it done, but I know this girl that works at this credit union that is a smaller bank. They work a little bit different. I can try to see if she can help, and and just knowing the market, and because everybody works differently. So again, everybody's needs are different, even though banks, because sometimes I have this issue with where I work. Sometimes it's like, okay, this is what we're going to offer, and this is what you got to offer the client. Well, my client, again, everybody should have a checking and a savings, but if my client doesn't know how to manage a checking, why would I offer a savings? So it's like making those decisions, putting it out there, because sometimes, we cannot assume. Sometimes we look at people and we make assumptions and we assume maybe wrong. Oh, this person is too old to do electronic banking. Well, you don't know. They might be a tech guru and know more than what we think they know. So never be afraid to put it out there, but also don't push it, because again, the client has to feel comfortable with whatever they're doing. So again, educate yourself before you make a decision. Never be afraid to ask, and don't go with the first answer you hear. You may go back to the first answer you hear because you're like, okay, that's the one that I like the best, but hear 2 and 3 too, just in case, and then you can always go back.
So in other words, hashtag educate before you make a decision. All of that. That's what the whole show has been about. Hashtag educate. So I do have a question. I found it very interesting. Why do people have multiple banks?
Again, the same thing that we were talking about, things, certain institutions can do things that others cannot. Like, again, Nick, that situation, she said, I had a local bank and it worked for me while I was there, or where I was in that area where that bank was prominent. Great. But the minute that she stepped away, she couldn't go to her bank and do things. And even though we do everything electronically, every once in a while you want to go to the ATM, or you want to go inside the bank and get a couple of dollars without having to pay $10 because you're using a foreign ATM. And then, all these other things, fees and stuff that may be associated with it. So, so sometimes, a regular bank may be able to do things that a credit union cannot. When it comes to business, the credit unions are great. When it comes to personal accounts, they work a little bit different. But when you go to the business side, you want to have a regular bank, not a credit union, for your business, because there's going to be, as your business grows, your account and the services and the things that the bank can provide to you as a business can grow with you. The credit union, yes, they may be able to offer you a checking account, but then anything else that the business may need, they might not be able to provide those services. While at a bank, you might be able to get those. So again, it depends on what your needs are, what you're wanting to get. But I always tell clients, if you have access to any credit union, I'm not, sold on any particular one. I have one that I like to do business with, but I always tell people, if you have access to a credit union, keep it. Don't close it. Just have it in the back pocket just in case. But then you also want to build that relationship with the bank, especially if you're a business owner. Especially if you're a business owner.
Mm-hmm.
Very good information, Maddie.
That's the information I wish I would have known before I went and thought, oh, it'll be good to have a credit, because I had used it as a personal bank, had great experience with credit unions, but it's that, when it comes to business, there's a lot of limitations that you'll uncover, and then it's a hassle to have to close one, to switch it for the business, So I love that. I was like, that would have been a great conversation to hear like 5-6 years ago.
Yeah, but you know what? It's never late to get knowledge. And then sometimes we learn by the mistakes that we make.
Absolutely. So. And now we can help someone listening to the show that they may be on the edge thinking, hey, well, now there's some experiences you've heard. And like Maddie was saying, go get your, point A, point B, different opinions to compare from, and go with the one that fits best your needs.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Well, our time is up. It's been an hour. It went by pretty quick. But of course, we're ready for Maddie's poem. I don't think she has a money poem, to be honest with you.
I do have something relating to finances, and I am going crazy here looking for it, and I can't find it. So I don't think I'm going to have a poem today.
I think this is a first for Maddie. She didn't have. You have to have one if you're in the financial world.
Not money, but I've thought about that too. But no, I haven't. I do have to say, like the best. I did hear like a poem from a local poet, but it was brilliantly written, and it went into finances, economic, credit, capitalism, and like everything. I was like, oh, I should have written that poem, but yeah. I got it. I had a headache just listening to him. I was like, "Oh my God, isn't that bad?"
Well, it's like some people they have these jobs, right? But they want nothing to do with it after working hours. Like I had a tutor, and she was a great tutor, but she was a teacher as well, and she tutored for a couple of years. But then one year she said, "No, I'm just going to work at the bowling alley." I was like, "What?" She's like, "Yeah." She's like, "I use my brain enough during the daytime. I just want to work at the bowling alley." I was like, okay. Happens sometimes. But we're ready.
So before I go into my poem, I know we're running a little bit out of time. My poem is not that long, but I just want to say that this past weekend, my team participated in the biggest poetry competition in Virginia. So we had all 6 Virginia teams going head to head, and we ended up in third place. So I'm really proud of my team. Yeah, we're getting ready to go to competition. We're going to compete at the biggest national competition, poetry competition. It's called Southern Fry, and this year is going to take place in Knoxville, Tennessee. So we're so excited. It's going to take place from June 11th to June 14th. So we're going to be in Knoxville, Tennessee that week. So I'm so excited. And this coming Wednesday, we're having our send-off event. So anybody that is in the local Hampton Roads area, please join us at the venue on 35th Street in Norfolk, Virginia. We're going to be having our big send-off showcase. The team is going to be showcasing all the work that we've been putting in. And then we have 2 individual poets that are going to be representing the area that are traveling with us, and they're going to be joining us. So if you're in Hampton Roads, follow me on the social media, Madeline Garcia. Instagram is MaddieG98, and I'll give you all the information. So, okay. So this is a little short poem, and actually I wrote this for one of the group pieces that we do as part of the team, and it's kind of like, a woman is the closest thing to God. So a woman has to be the closest thing to God. A man gives her a seed and she can make an entire human or not. It's her body, and she will always have the last word on that. She will not be bullied into what black suits without vaginas want her to want. If her head is bowed, is not in submission, she carries the weight of the world on her back, having to prove that she is enough to rear the men who will lead the world, but not enough to lead the world led by the men she birthed. A boy born today can be a doctor, a lawyer, be called sir, but let me tell you about your girl. She needs to get married, have children, a career or two, help her husband thrive, and she must always look good. While he can give his 100%, she has to divide herself in fractions and make it all weight the same. Disappointed when her half is less than one, she remembers how God broke one to feed thousands and left everyone satisfied. Tell me she isn't the closest thing to God. If you don't believe me, you never met my mom. Women make miracles happen daily. Look at yourself in the mirror and always remind yourself of that.
I like that. Thank you, Maddie. And it's true. I'm going to have to agree with the poem. And then we almost forgot to greet our audience. Nicauri said hello, and Iván Urueña, saludos desde Colombia, even though we talked in English today. Pero muchos saludos a nuestra audiencia de Colombia, de Estados Unidos, creo que otros países, Venezuela, México, Santo Domingo, Puerto Rico también nos ven. La próxima vez vamos a hacer el show en español porque hace buen tiempo que no hacemos un show solamente en español. So la próxima vez vamos a hacer en español. Pero gracias por estar con nosotros. Thank you for being with us today. Estaremos aquí el próximo domingo a las 4 de la tarde. So we will be here next Sunday at 4 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Not Nick Des time.
Yeah.
I was going to say 10 a.m. if you're Nick Day.
Yeah, yep.
If you're with Nick Day, yes. So I hope you guys have an amazing week on purpose, as our friend Tangi would say. And Nick Day, I hope you have an amazing week and enjoy gardening with your child and everybody, and enjoy your summer. And next time, I think we're going to talk a little bit about our summer plans since we're already mid-year. Yeah. So lots of projects, lots of things to do.
I like
it. I hope you guys have an amazing week. And thank you, Mark, our producer, as well.
Yes, thank you. Thank you all. Gracias.
Whether you're a seasoned designer, dabbler, or just starting out, this course is for you.
Are you a Black person currently in the technology industry or pursuing a career in tech? The Blacks in Technology Foundation is here to support fulfilling your goals. BIT is the largest community of Black people in the technology industry focused on increasing racial equity in tech. We are a nonprofit dedicated to offering no and low-cost services to people of African descent worldwide. Our complimentary services include training and certification, scholarships and grants, various mentorship opportunities, career development and job-seeking services, professional networking, events and conferences, support for entrepreneurs, and much more. We are ready to help people across all technology disciplines, including those who are transitioning to the industry and those who work in technology companies but not in technical roles. Our goal is to help every member succeed. Join Blacks in Technology today and start stomping the divide.
Are just so impressed with them. Like I said, we've been with them for years. I will recommend and refer anyone to them. We stand by A+ academics. They're the best.
A+ tutorial really did help me with all my grades. They all went up when I came to this place. And I would say I recommend this school to everyone.
So it's a really good environment to be in, especially for me because it makes me look up to my parents.
If you have students that need academic help, A+ Academics is the place to be. A+ Academics, what a great place to go for academics.
It's just a really great place to learn.